Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. I'm Eric Hammond. We're live in Washington, D.C. And coming up on Firstpost America, we've got the latest on the Middle East, as well as other stories from the U.S. and around the world. But before that, here's a look at the latest global headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets Canada's Foreign Minister in New Delhi, stating that the visit will help give new momentum to India-Canada bilateral ties. Russia says there are no current plans for a call between President Donald Trump and himself following the U.S. leader's warning about potentially sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron says he will continue to serve and ensure stability, ignoring repeated calls by the opposition to resign amid the country's worst political crisis in decades. Soldiers and security forces join hundreds celebrating in Madagascar's capital as the president addresses the nation following weeks of protests and growing calls for his resignation. And a trio of American, French, and Canadian researchers win the Nobel Prize in Economics for their work on technology's impact on sustained economic growth. For more than 2 years, families in Israel have lived with uncertainty, waiting for news of their loved ones taken hostage during the October 7, 2023 attacks. The fear, the long nights of not knowing, and the constant hope for a safe return have been heavy burdens to carry. On Monday, that hope became reality for the first time when Matan was safely returned from Gaza. His mother spoke to him for the first time in over 2 years, her voice trembling with relief and joy as she learned her son was finally on his way home.
אתה לא מאמין, חיים שלי, עזה תהיה בסדר, אין יותר מלחמה, אתם כולכם חוזרים הביתה.
כולם מאמי נגמר.
זהו, נגמרה המלחמה, אתם חוזרים הביתה, חיים שלי, אני אוהבת אותך. חיים שלי.
מתן, מאמי, נגמר המלחמה.
גדול מתן, אתה חוזר הביתה, כולכם חוזרים הביתה, אני אוהבת אותך. חיים שלי, תודה לאל, נגמרה המלחמה, נגמרה המלחמה, אין מלחמה. אתה בא הביתה, חיים שלי, אמא, אתה בא הביתה, אין מלחמה, אין מלחמה, נגמר. חיים שלי, אני אוהבת אותך, אני מחכה לך. חיים שלי.
On Monday, Hamas released all 20 living Israeli hostages as part of a ceasefire agreement brokered by President Donald Trump. Footage showed the freed captives smiling and embracing each other after their release, marking an emotional moment in the ongoing conflict. The historic moment marks the beginning of a larger exchange that has brought tears, cheers, and a cautious sense of hope to both sides of the conflict. Each individual hostage release sparked waves of emotion, relief, joy, and disbelief, not just for the families, but for the entire communities who had held on to hope for years.
Very exciting moment where the Jewish people is united, and this you see the big family in this in this group of people was very tense and sad. Because all the war, but because alone was taken out from us, turned out from us, and now this is a great happiness and great hallelujah.
In Tel Aviv, Hostages Square became the epicenter of celebrations and anticipation. Crowds gathered overnight, holding photographs, singing, and cheering as big screens broadcast updates on each handover. They together sang an anthem, which means coming home, a symbol of perseverance, resilience, and the struggle to bring the hostages safely back. Families embraced, tears mingled with laughter, and the air was thick, the raw emotions of joy and relief after years of uncertainty. Some held posters of President Trump and thanked him for brokering the ceasefire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife Sarah sent a personal message to the hostages welcoming them back. According to the Prime Minister's office, the welcome kit included clothing and personal equipment, a laptop, a cell phone, and a tablet. The Israeli Defense Forces dubbed the handover Operation Returning Home and shared names and pictures of the released hostages on X. Meanwhile, across the border in Gaza City and Khan Yunis, preparations were also underway to welcome Palestinians released by Israel as part of the ceasefire agreement. Residents navigated streets still scarred by rubble and destruction, filled with anticipation and cautious hope. As part of the ceasefire deal, Israel was earlier reported to release 1,722 Palestinians. However, the final list of Palestinians to be released was reportedly reduced by 4 in an urgent telephone vote. In West Bank, the released Palestinians were greeted with cheers and hugs.
It's a mother's feeling. What else can I be feeling? I am extremely happy just to see him and hug him and know that he is fine. Thank God for his blessings. May he release all the captives, and those who remain detained, may God release them.
And according to reports, among those on the list are high-profile detainees including Hussam Abu Safia, a pediatrician and director of Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza, and Marwan al-Hams, who was a senior Palestinian doctor and a director of field hospitals for the Gaza Health Ministry. Doctors were abducted last year by Israeli forces. However, reports say they'll only be released if the overall quota is not met. Now, amid all the joy and euphoria, it's still unclear if this moment marks a lasting peace or if this is just a brief pause in the long raging conflict. As Israel confirmed the release of all living hostages held by Hamas, U.S. President Donald Trump touched down in Tel Aviv. The president addressed Israel's parliament where he praised Prime Minister Netanyahu's wartime leadership. He called the return of hostages the start of the historic dawn of a new Middle East. Let's take a listen.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
And at the Knesset, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu also thanked President Trump for the Gaza peace proposal, which he said ended the war. The Prime Minister said Israel had now achieved amazing victories over Hamas and Iranian proxies in the region.
Welcome you here to thank you for your pivotal leadership in putting forward a proposal that got the backing of almost the entire world. A proposal that brings all our hostages home. A proposal that ends the war by achieving all our objectives. A proposal that opens the door to an historic expansion of peace in our region and beyond our region.
Earlier, Trump was greeted at the airport by the Prime Minister and his wife, and the Israeli President and the First Lady. The leaders shared a warm handshake and a brief hug before huddling right on the runway for a conversation. And in a break from protocol, Prime Minister Netanyahu joined Trump in the latter's presidential vehicle. Trump's visit comes with the promise of conclusively ending the Gaza war, which has reportedly killed over 67,000 people in the enclave. And earlier this morning, Tel Aviv's beachfront turned into a stage of praise for the president. The U.S. president's face was sketched on sand, captioned "Thank you" and "Home." The crowds in Tel Aviv were heard chanting "Thank you, Trump," as the first convoy carrying Israeli hostages crossed into Israeli territory.
אבל עוד כמה דקות, Air Force One.
The focus now shifts to Egypt, where diplomacy takes center stage. And with hours, Trump and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi were scheduled to co-chair a high-stakes summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, aimed at defining Gaza's political future and broader regional stability. However, Hamas confirmed they will not participate. Iran, too, has opted out, citing Israeli strikes on the country in June. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also declined the invite for the summit, citing a period of Jewish holiday. Now, apart from them, more than 20 world leaders are beginning to gather for this historic summit. They include French President Emmanuel Macron, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Turkish President Erdogan, Jordan's King Abdullah II, and the Emir of Qatar, the King of Bahrain, Prime Minister of Kuwait, also the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and the foreign ministers of both Oman and Japan. India has also sent its Minister of State for External Affairs as Prime Minister Narendra Modi's special envoy. The Indian minister posted on X late Sunday night confirming his arrival. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the Arab League's Secretary General, and the President of the European Council will also be in attendance, leading institutional heft to the summit's ambitions. The world turns its gaze now to Egypt with high expectations, but for now, hope and skepticism share the same table. And the coming hours will reveal whether words from the summit can truly translate into peace on the ground. The trade war between the United States and China has reignited, with President Donald Trump announcing steep new tariffs and restrictions in response to Beijing's tightening of export controls on rare earth minerals. The move marks the sharpest escalation in economic tensions between the world's two largest economies in 6 months. Last week on Friday, President Trump unveiled plans to impose an additional 100% tariff on all Chinese exports to the United States. He also announced fresh restrictions on the export of any and all critical software beginning November 1st, 9 days before the current tariff relief is set to expire.
Based on the fact that China has taken this unprecedented position and speaking only for the USA and not other nations who were similarly threatened, starting November 1st, 2025 United States of America will impose a tariff of 100% on China, over and above any tariff that they are currently paying. Also on November 1st, we will impose export controls on any and all critical software.
Trump's measures come after China's decision to expand export curbs on rare earth elements, which are key materials used in advanced technologies including smartphones, electric vehicles, and military systems. Describing China's actions as a hostile order, President Trump said the United States had been left with no choice but to respond financially. The president also hinted at possible new restrictions on U.S. airplane parts and technology exports to China, though no formal announcement has in fact been made.
For every element that they have been able to monopolize, we have two. I never thought it would come to this, but perhaps, as with all things, the time has come. Ultimately, though potentially painful, it will be a very good thing in the end for the USA. One of the policies that we are calculating at this moment is a massive increase of tariffs on Chinese products coming into the United States of America.
Beijing swiftly condemned Washington's latest measures, calling them a case of double standards. A spokesman for China's Commerce Ministry said, quote, "China's position on the trade war is consistent. We do not want it, but we are not afraid of it," end quote. The ministry further defended its rare earth curbs as necessary for national security, citing global instability and rising military conflicts. However, China stopped short of announcing immediate retaliatory tariffs on American goods.
Just consulting the relevant Chinese authorities for specific inquiries. The United States imposing restrictions on Chinese airlines operations is not conducive to fostering people-to-people exchanges between the two countries. We suggest that the U.S. instead reflect on the impact of its own policies on its domestic enterprises, rather than unjustifiably suppressing other nations and making global consumers foot the bill.
Markets reacted sharply to the renewed tensions, but despite the jitters, President Trump appeared to soften his tone over the weekend. Taking to Truth Social, he wrote, quote, "The USA wants to help China, not hurt it. The renewed trade tensions have also cast uncertainty over a possible meeting between President Trump and China's Xi Jinping at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in South Korea later this month. President Trump initially suggested he might cancel the meeting, calling it pointless, but later clarified, saying, quote, "We haven't canceled anything yet. I just don't know if they were going to have it," end quote.
No, I haven't canceled, but I don't know that we're going to have it. But I'm going to be there regardless, so I would assume we might have it. But, you know, they hit the world with something that really is not anything that people are going to do.
The fragile calm achieved earlier this year now appears in jeopardy as both sides are accusing each other of economic aggression and maintaining tough stances. The coming days, however, may determine whether the world's two biggest economies step back from confrontation or move closer and closer to a full-scale trade war. And now we move to Venezuela, where folklore, politics, and global power are colliding like thunder and lightning. President Nicolas Maduro has made his first public appearance since his fiercest rival, Maria Corina Machado, won the Nobel Peace Prize. But instead of applause, Maduro unleashed words that felt more like a curse. Without saying names, he referred to Machado as a ghostly figure from a local legend. Maduro's comments come after Machado dedicated the award to President Donald Trump, a man long painted by Caracas as a looming threat to Venezuela. Her praise struck the heart of Maduro's anti-American narrative, turning diplomacy into a duel. Our next report has all the details.
Sunday in Caracas was supposed to be about history. It was supposed to be a day to mark the indigenous resistance. But it turned into a day of defiance. President Nicolas Maduro took the stage before a sea of supporters. This was his first major appearance since Maria Corina Machado, his longtime political rival, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Committee had praised Machado for her tireless work in defending human rights and pushing democracy in Venezuela. But the president had no congratulations to offer. Instead, he lashed out at the new Nobel laureate. He called Machado a demonic witch. He didn't take her name. He didn't need to. The message was loud and clear. Maduro then reached deep into Venezuela's folklore, invoking La Sayona, a ghostly woman with pale skin and black hair.
All the polls are there. 90% of our people reject any threat of invasion or war against Venezuela. All the polls say so. Between 80% and 85% of our people are ready to fight for their homeland, for their land, Venezuela. And 90% of the entire population repudiates the demonic witch La Sayona.
It was a chilling comparison, one that his supporters understood immediately. The insult wasn't random. For years, Maduro's government has used the legend of La Sayona to mock Machado, twisting folklore into politics. Maduro has accused Machado of calling for a foreign invasion. Just the day before Maduro's fiery speech, she dedicated her Nobel Peace Prize to the suffering people of Venezuela and to President Donald Trump. She credited the US president for his decisive support in Venezuela's fight for freedom. Trump, never one to miss the spotlight, confirmed the call. He laughed, saying Machado was very nice. He even joked that he did not ask Machado to give him the prize. It wasn't just humour. Trump himself had been vying for the Nobel this year.
The person who actually got the Nobel Prize called me and said, I'm accepting this in honor of you because you really deserved it. A very nice thing to do. I didn't say then give it to me though. I think she might have. She was very nice, and I've been helping her along the way. They need a lot of help in Venezuela. It's a basic disaster. So, and you could also say it was given out for 24, and I was running for office in 24. You know, all of the transactions that we did in terms of closing, but. There are those that say we did so much that they should have done it, but I don't take... I'm happy because I saved millions of lives.
Behind the exchange lies a deeper story, one of rivalry, rebellion, and foreign influence. Washington and Caracas have been locked in tension for years. Under the Trump administration, the US deployed warships to the southern Caribbean. The administration has conducted a series of lethal strikes against small boats in the Caribbean, killing at least 21 people. The US says the strikes target narco-traffickers. Maduro called it a threat, a move meant to intimidate his government and embolden the opposition. And now the Venezuelan leader has gone one step further. He has ordered his armed forces to expand indigenous militias, urging them to be ready to defend the republic. At Sunday's rally, he thundered, "We want peace, but peace with sovereignty."
We want peace, and we will have peace, but peace with freedom, with sovereignty, with independence, with dignity and equality. Not the peace of empires, the peace of Gaza's ruins, not the peace of misery and hunger, not the peace of death and blood, no, not the peace of domination, not the peace of colonies, no.
To his followers, he's defending Venezuela's independence. To his critics, he's fueling fear and folklore to silence democracy. Venezuela now stands divided between two visions of peace. One shaped by diplomacy, the other by defiance. It's a clash between power and persuasion. And as Maduro rallies his forces and Machado rallies the world, the question is no longer who speaks louder, but whose voice the nation will follow when the echoes fade.
New Zealand's parliament was briefly brought to a standstill last week, not by debate, but by dance. Members of the public gallery erupted into an unsanctioned haka following the maiden speech of the country's newest Maori party. While the traditional war dance is a cornerstone of Maori culture, its spontaneous performance in the House sparked a suspension and a promise of an investigation. We bring you the story behind the haka, its cultural significance, and the delicate balance between tradition and parliamentary procedure.
New Zealand's parliament briefly ground to a halt on October 9th when members of the public gallery broke into an unsanctioned haka. This is after the maiden speech of the country's newest Maori Party MP. Oriini Kaipara, elected in September to fill a vacant seat, addressed the parliament for the first time. As is customary, MPs and guests from the public gallery performed a planned and approved Maori song to celebrate her arrival. But what followed was unexpected. Footage from the parliament shows the public gallery erupting into a haka. It is a traditional Maori war dance.
No, not that.
Speaker of the House quickly intervened and suspended the sitting when the performance continued.
House is suspended.
Under parliamentary rules, MPs or their supporters must obtain permission to perform a haka in the public gallery. The House Speaker later announced he would investigate whether any party or MPs had prior knowledge of the spontaneous performance, describing it as contemptuous.
The guarantee was that would not be taking place.
The haka has deep cultural significance in New Zealand. Traditionally performed to welcome visiting tribes or energize warriors ahead of battle. It is now also seen at important public events and sporting matches, most famously before rugby games. The episode on October 9th echoes past tensions between the Maori Party and the Parliament. In June, 3 Maori MPs received historically long suspensions after performing a haka during a vote on the contentious Treaty Principles Bill. It sought to reinterpret New Zealand's founding treaty between the British Crown and Maori. The bill was ultimately defeated. Opposition MP, who led the 2024 protest haka, described it as a moment of defiance against attempts to silence Maori voices.
The silencing of us today is a reminder of the silencing of our ancestors of the past. And it continues to happen today. 21 days of silence. This may be confronting, but this is a reality for our whānaus. This is a reality for the people who descend from tipuna, who are wrongfully accused. Because you interpreted something. Interpretation is a feeling, it's not a fact.
The October incident has reignited debates over the role of Maori culture in the parliament, balancing tradition with procedural rules. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon and parliamentary officials have stressed that the issue is about adherence to parliamentary rules, not the haka itself. Despite the temporary disruption, Kaipara's maiden speech marked a historic moment for the Maori Party. It is a sign of the party's continued presence and influence in New Zealand politics. For some, the haka in the gallery may have been a spirited, if rule-bending, welcome for the newest MP.
No, not that. The guarantee was that would not be taking place.
That does it for us here today at First Post America, and from all of us here, we certainly thank you for tuning in. We hope you have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow.